Hello and welcome to Affinity. Here's something I've been playing with for a while, and I almost came across it by accident. I'm a bit of an experimenter. I try stuff just to see what happens. And this has got a little bit of technology and a bit of equations and sums, but I'm going to show you what it does first, and hopefully that'll get you hooked so you want to know how to do it yourself. So what it is in fact, if I close this down here, what you can see is I got a layer up here which is complex, and the original picture here. Turn one on, turn one off, just to show you it's the same thing, nothing changed in the picture. So I open it up and I've got hue, saturation and luminosity, and I've separated those out. And if we look at those separately, turn these off from the bottom, there's hue. My goodness, look at that, because this is the saturated color that we're starting from. And it looks like, how the heck could that turn into the colours in the picture? But as you can see, it does, because the hue is just the colour, because how saturated it is, how grey or bright, vivid, then is controlled by the next layer, which is saturation, which is combines like that. But if we look at it by itself, this is not a black and white layer. This is a saturation map, effectively. This shows us where the bright areas are. This is where it is saturated. In other words, I've got the bright colours here. Where there is dark areas, it is not saturated, which means it's more grey. So up here, you've got cloud, which is white. So it's kind of grey. Down here, it's dark, so it's more grey. So that's how that works. And the third one, luminosity, this is a bit more what you expect from like a black and white image, but it shows you where this is the whiteness in the image. In other words, where it is whiter, that's where white is, where it's blacker, that is where black is. But actually that's kind of important, because if you used a CMYK image, then the blacks would be kind of reversed. So it's not always as it seems, but this is how this works, and they combine together really nicely into the original image, as you saw. So what can you do with it? Well, if we take the hue, for example, if I want to play around with changing colours in that, I might go to adjustments and the selected colour. And here I will just stick here with the reds and say, up in here, this orange building, I'd like to make this a bit redder. Orange has got red and green in it, so therefore I want to turn down the green. And in selective colour, I know that magenta is the opposite of green. So if I turn up magenta, what it actually does is turn down green. So let's turn it up, and you can see, there you go. You're actually making that building redder. Or if you go the other way, you're going to make it more orange and even yellow as you take out the red on this. So, and that, when you're doing that, notice no luminosity change whatsoever, no saturation change, because those are held elsewhere. If I go to saturation now, one of the things I can do now is I can take a white here and a paintbrush over here, and its opacity is about 20 here, hardness 25. I'll just, as it was, and if I now paint down here, I'm going to paint onto the saturation layer. Let's have another look at that. Alt click. So this is dark down here, so I'm just, by making this lighter here, I'll click the hue layer. I've got all the bright green color here, so I'm just letting more of that through. If I painted this completely white, that bright color will come through, but it's a bit too much, so I'm just going to paint it here, and it just brings back a quite natural looking lawn there with the color, and it's just brightened it up, and it's almost amazing how that can do that. Similarly, I can go to the black brush here. If I can turn down the size of the paintbrush here, I could paint a bit darker onto here, and I can then turn down the saturation on there. But even if the picture up here, if this bit here is fairly saturated up here, I can just reduce saturation there. So I've got that amount of control. And finally, luminosity, what can I do there? This is where you do sharpening. If you try sharpening the black and white with the saturation layer, you get sort of strange effects, but it doesn't really sharpen it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to control roll the mouse to get into this here, so you can see a bit more here. If I'd like to sharpen some of these lines here, let's do that quickly with a high pass filter. It looks strange here, of course, but with high pass We change the blend mode to one of the contrast modes, so linear light is often a good one. So now here's the original, and we don't actually need to click the monochrome here. I often do just by habit, because we're working on a black and white layer. And if I turn the radius up here, you can see it very quickly becomes very noticeably sharpened here, and you start getting a little bit of color move out there, the darkness going as it basically spreads out. Normally I never go beyond 1 anyway, but you very quickly get a much stronger effect. And you can see that if I turn that high pass on or off, so it's off and on, it's very distinctive quite quickly, and you get a very strong sharpening effect. And you can of course put some noise reduction beforehand if it's adding that too much. You can see there's a bit of noise in the sky there. It's being sharpened. You obviously didn't want that, but this is just an illustration. Right, that's that. That's how it works. I'm going to get into more technical now. If you don't like technical stuff, you might want to look away. But if you're curious, then here's where the interesting stuff starts. Okay. So here we've got these here. In fact, let's just turn this. I'm going to go back to the beginning of this to do it a bit at a time. Right, let's start off, and we've got here red, green and blue. So this is 1 pixel, and every pixel these things are different. And each of red, green and blue can go from 0 to 1 or 100%, because 100% means 100 divided by 100, which is 1. And this is handy for doing calculations. So we're going to use some calculations. In 8-bit, the 1 is actually 255, so it's just sort of like normalized to that, because it could, if it was 16-bit color, it would be 65535. So it's a lot easier just to say 1, from 0 to 1, or 100% if you like. Now then, what do those look like? So let's put this on here. We'll turn on this rectangle here and set the colors here. So the red is fairly high. Let's turn the red so it's kind of up like that. The green is the lowest, and the blue is somewhere in between. So you end up with this sort of nice reddish color. Anyway, so that's the color that we're kind of working with in this particular pixel. And then we can look at some of the things in that. So first of all, just looking at what can we measure in this, and in particular with the apply image which we're going to use, we can calculate the maximum, which is going to be very, very handy. And the maximum color is up here. It's red in this case, at the top of the red. It's always going to be the top of one color or another. And similarly, we can look at the minimum down here. So one color is going to be the maximum, one's going to be the minimum, and the other is going to be somewhere in between, which is interesting. So in this case, let's say this is value of B for blue. And then this distance here is B here, because it's measured from this bottom upwards, minus this amount here. So if this was, say, 10 and this was 5, then it'd be take away the 5, which leaves 5 there, that kind of thing. Then if we do look at this gap here, this is the maximum subtracting, taking away the minimum, this bit here, and this gives our color range. So effectively what we've got here is this bottom layer here, where you've got values in all of them. That sort of represents the white. This in the middle sort of represents the color, and this up here where there's nothing sort of represents the black. And you can actually do stuff in equations with that. And bring them all together, if I do this calculation where I measure a new value for blue and take it, the B minus min, which is this one here, so it's this amount here, and divide it by the max minus min, which is this, we're effectively saying this as a proportion of this. So if this gap in the middle here was, say, 5, and this here was, say, 2, then it would be 2 divided by 5, or 2/5 or 0.2. And it could range from 0 to 1. So you actually get that kind of effect in here. So if you go back to this rectangle here and see what that would mean is, so if you would stretch here, this kind of equation, it effectively makes the blue go from 0 to 1, or any color in here 0 to 1, and it by pushing 1 down here and 1 up here, because the green, when you calculate it this way, it would be 0. The red, it would be 1. So you push that down, push that up, and you effectively get a bright saturated color. A saturated color has got one of these red, green, blue at least fully up. And it's because it's got the other one pushed all the way down, that means you've got the maximum range on it, which you'll always have because you're using max and min. Let's go into something practical, shall we? Let's go back to this one here. And we're going to Control 0 to zoom all the way out again. And we'll take this HSA layer and delete it because we're going to reduplicate that. So let's hit Control J 3 times to set up some separate layers. And we can take the top layer, turn that one on. I'm going to turn that one into the hue layer by putting that equation in. Remember this one here. Looks messy, but it's not. And we'll do that by going to Filters, Apply Image, click on Use Current Layer as Source and Equations, which you all have to do, and then say, open brackets, got the SR, which is source red, which means before, and then DR is destination red, which is after, so it's like before and after red, minus the minimum of red, green and blue, close brackets, then divided by, open brackets, the maximum minus the minimum. There you go. And I'm going to copy that and I can stick it into the other ones for now. And it doesn't look like our hue layer yet because we need to change the red in each of those to green and blue. And there we go. There we've got the hue layer. And as before, it is fully saturated all the way through because the saturation is going to be applied to this. Effectively, it's going to pull down the saturation from the maximum down to what is realistically is in the picture. And this is handy, as we'll see. So let's call that one hue. I'll make the next one here saturation, and whilst we're typing, we'll say luminance. Luminosity is, yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? Luminosity, it's just all how bright and dark it is. So saturation, I'll turn that one on and turn that one off so we can see what's happening. And what we're going to do here is, let's go back here to have a look at it, because this is a measure of saturation. And we're going to go back to our little rectangle here. At the moment, that is fully saturated as possible because it's one right up and one right down. But as we bring things in, it gets grayer. And as we move things in more, it gets closer and closer to a greyish sort of colour until they're all the same, in which case it turns grey. In other words, the maximum minus the minimum is now 0. So if you take that max minus min, you've got yourself a kind of measure of how saturated it is by that how far apart the colours are. And if I take this equation here, I put this one in here, but the denominator on the bottom, I've got the max minus min. If I put max minus in on another layer and multiply together, it kind of cancel that out, which leaves the b minus this, but it will have done it by applying the saturation. Let's do that. So I go Filters, Apply Image, use Current Layer as Source and Equations, and then I'm going to go Max minus Min. And I copy that and paste it there and paste it there so they're all the same, which is what it should be because we just want the max minus min throughout all. So this is just control, and what we've got now when we apply image is we've got a saturation map. This tells us it is not a black and white layer as such. It is simply telling us where there's more saturation. So up here in this building, which is brighter, this is more saturated. In the sky where there's a brighter blue up here, that was not. Whereas over here, where it's just white cloud, it is less so. Down here, where it is a darker green, then it is less saturated. That's what this does. And if I turn the top layer on, I want a blend mode for the top one here, effectively that takes the max minus min of the saturation layer and basically snips it off here. So this is divided by it, so I need to multiply by it to get that to happen. So let's go back to this one and set here a multiply blend. And there we go. We've now got the saturation information in here. We've combined the hue and the saturation, and we've got this, but it does still doesn't look right yet because we haven't got the luminosity, the brightness. So the sky up here, this is white, and we haven't got the bit that says make that white. And we can get it quite quickly here, because effectively what we've done so far is we've done this layer, we've snipped this off, but it's left us effectively with B minus min. So we want to add that min back in again. And this minimum here is effectively a measure of the whiteness, and it varies very much with each pixel. And we're going to put it into here, the luminosity layer. So filters, apply image, use current layer as source and equations, and then we're just going to say min. And put this one in here, and this one in here. And there we've got, this is a black and white layer, and it's a measure of how white it is. So clouds, yes, the clouds are going to be white. And down here, this is dark, there's not much whiteness in here. And that's, of course, what we might expect, which is great. So how do we combine them? Well, those two, which we sort of combined together here, those got the bottom off this. We need to get back to the blue to what we see originally. So we're taking away the minimum here, so we need to add it back in. So we go to this one here, take those top two layers, turn them on, Control G to turn them into a group, and change the blend mode of that to add. And there we go, it's reconstituted the original image. So now we've got hue, saturation, and luminosity, separate layers that we can edit separately and do all kinds of interesting things. I just showed just a thin end of what you can do. It's far more than you can do with just an HSL command. And there you go. Well, I hope it's okay. It's perhaps a bit more fiddly than some things, but I just had great fun doing this, and I hope you do too. So thank you very much for watching.